Hi, hello. Oh, I just froze. Okay, there we go. I think just getting the recording going. Okay. Hello, I'm Andrea from the Creative Dream Incubator. This is a really special edition of Creative Dream TV. I have a guest here, Lisa Sonora Beam from lisasonora.com. Lisa is one of the most inspiring people that I've known. I wanted to share a little story instead of just like a little brief introduction. About 4 or 5 years ago, when I was working in a cubicle 4 days a week, and I was doing my creativity workshops and doing some one-on-one work with people on the side, and I was starting to wish that I could do, my really meaningful and happy making work as my full-time thing, but I didn't see a way to do it, and I had all these weird ideas about how I wouldn't be good at business, or I didn't know anything about business, and that it would be hard and it would be scary and that I wouldn't make enough money. So I was just starting to seek out looking at ways that I could maybe make this happen. So I was starting to read business books, and I was really, really frustrated by what I was finding. It was they were boring, or they were offensive, or they were just like, I felt like I'll never really grasp this or really be interested in this enough to make it happen. And I was really frustrated in all of these books I was reading. And then I came across Lisa's book, which is called The Creative Entrepreneur, and it was like everything changed as soon as I opened up this book. And it was essentially creative journaling combined with growing a business, and it blew my mind. I don't even really have words to explain how happy I was to see this merging of things, and then all of a sudden the business stuff made sense. Everything felt doable and approachable, and I felt like, wow, like, and it's just, for anyone who's ever thought something was impossible and then suddenly realized that it's not impossible, like, how amazing that is. And I know that Lisa's book has impacted more like countless people, right, all around the world, who were able to start taking their creative ideas and turn them into a business. So I'm just insanely grateful for Lisa for doing her work, and for putting that out there, and then for being able to be here and chat with us today. I think this is amazing. So thank you, Lisa, and welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to find out what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, we didn't we didn't super plan this, because we thought, whatever we're going to talk about is going to be really, really interesting, right? Yeah. And one of the things that I love about Lisa's work now, because the Creative Entrepreneur, how many years old is that?
Maybe. Well, it came out at the very end of 2008, but okay. I think people are still discovering it today.
Oh, totally.
So it really started getting traction in 2009.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. And it seems too that your work has evolved. Everyone's work continues to evolve and grow. I love what you're offering now, which is the creative practice, the online course. What I really love on the course description for that page, you talk about how people always want to know, how do you do it? And I think that's the number one question any dreamer has, like, how do you make it happen? And so people want to know specific things about websites and online business and how to make all of that work. And you talk about how really the most helpful thing that I can share with you is how to develop your creative practice. So can you talk a little bit about that?
I would love to. And I want to touch back on something you said about my work evolving. And this is kind of this is, I guess, what people might think if the first contact they ever had with me was through the Creative Entrepreneur. But actually, way before the Creative Entrepreneur, I was doing the work of creative practice.
Of course, yeah.
In fact, the journals that you see in the Creative Entrepreneur book, the examples, so every page in that book has color examples of sketchbooks and journals from myself and my students.
It is so beautiful.
And that work, when I started, first of all, I always taught the creative process in many different forms, through painting, writing, and then finally combining them both in sketchbooks. It's been really my own personal practice. And then when I was an art therapist, I started doing it with my patients, not as therapy, but I actually hit a real roadblock one time and was very frustrated with kind of everything I learned about traditional therapy. And I felt really stuck, and I felt like the tools that I had available weren't really helping my patients. And this was an inpatient psychiatric situation. And so one day, and I had a whole group of teenage girls, and so one day I just got this idea that I would bring in blank sketchbooks for them. And I told them right up front, I said, you guys, this isn't therapy. I honestly don't know how to help you, but I still get emotional when I talk about this. But I said, I just want to share with you something that helped me when I was sitting where you're sitting. And as a therapist, we were never allowed to self-disclose or tell anything about our story. And that's something I didn't like about the therapy model, that almost like I had to put on a suit and pretend to be really professional. I mean, I was 23 years old and not very far away from like dealing with all the struggles that kind of made me want to become a therapist. And so to me, that wasn't really me. That wasn't really my style. Not that I'm going to burden my patients with, I mean, there's just rules in therapy that this is why I love coaching so much, because you can just do it in a way that feels natural to you and is authentic. And you're not trying to pretend like you have all your shit together.
Yeah.
Like there were days I would go in and be like, well, it's just really accidental that I'm the one with the keys. Because it's a fragile continuum.
It is, yeah.
And then I also felt too, like psychiatric hospitals are great for someone who's truly psychotic and a danger to themselves or others. But a lot of times psych hospitals just were becoming something else. And anyway, I won't go on that tangent, but it was just a way, like, so teaching this method to my patients is how this started. Just telling them how to be authentic on the page and tell their own story, also in a way that was incredibly private. So under no circumstances did they ever have to show anything on their pages or talk about anything in their books. And I never interpreted anything that anybody made. The way we held discussions about the work was more on how they felt doing it, what they were learning, and it wasn't really about what was happening on the paper directly. So that opened up my eyes a lot in terms of what was possible, because first of all, it was really like the first time I ever had an honest conversation with a crowd of teenagers. Like, they just don't want to talk to you. So it just started opening, and then I just found like this opened people after I was out of that environment and working on my own. It was a way that I, of course, continued to use myself, but I found like anytime I had a situation where I had to teach somebody something or help them learn something, like I used this visual journaling and sketchbook process in all of my teaching and in all of my facilitator training work that I was doing for other organizations. So working visually and with words in a private way on blank paper is just a wonderful way educationally to integrate new learnings. And then if you're using it for problem solving and for insight and healing, you can just go anywhere you want with it. The tool is completely open-ended. And so when I finally started teaching business stuff, this is like a long trajectory of my career, changing over the 30 years or whatever, when people were asking me to combine, like, how are you a successful artist or creative? How have you always made your own money doing your own thing? I really thought about how I could teach business stuff. And to me, it just came down to like, well, teaching business in the traditional way is pretty boring, but this is how I understand it. I understand it visually. And I was always making pictures and trying to explain things to my clients this way. And so just getting people involved in their own creative process was where this work came from. So the creative entrepreneur work really grew out of the whole creative practice and that thread. And I've been very eager to publish more on this subject. And the way I'm doing that is on my blog and in my courses. And I do have another book that I'm going to do that I think of as like a prequel to The Creative Entrepreneur. That project's been stalled a little bit, but I've been mostly teaching about it, and that material is stuff I'm working on for the next book. Cool. That really is all about these methods and how people can use them on their own or use them with others.
Yeah, you know, you can feel that richness in the book, like that, that we're not just like cutting up and like putting pretty pictures on the page. Like there's something really kind of magical happening in that process, and you're kind of accessing more parts of you than you can access normally. You know, so I feel like it's like plugging into your superpowers.
Yeah, it is. It can go a lot of places.
So what you're teaching now with the creative practice, is that essentially helping people get into that practice, to create the practice?
The reason I call it creative practice, and I use the word practice really consciously because how do I want to say this? So when we're learning something new, like if we want to become a writer or a painter or a musician, so I have a background in music, and my first degree was I went to a music conservatory, and that's where I got my therapy degree and all that. And there was so much practice involved. There was hours and hours and hours of practice every single day for many, many years to become even semi-good at a professional level, to be in that school, or to play professionally, or to create. And so I think that there was a lot missing in that for me, like how do you practice and how do you confront your fears, your performance anxiety? There was nowhere I was met in my own creative training in terms of how do I deal with the anxieties I have about working, about creating, about putting myself out there, about literally being on stage. The first person who really helped me with this, and I met her just when I finished my undergraduate. This was back in Chicago, so I studied with Julia Cameron, who wrote another awesome book, which many of your viewers probably are aware of, The Artist's Way. Yeah. So she was living in Chicago teaching the classes that became the Artist's Way book. And it was just really fortunate that I found her flyer in a bookstore and went to the workshops. They were weekly classes with her. And she helped me deal with all the shame and fear and anxiety that I had around my creativity. I mean, she was the first person who just thought, well, that's normal. Like every creative person feels like this. It's the first time I just felt met by a human being that didn't say, you know, you're too tense and maybe you should drink more. Or, you know, I mean, what was so great about Julia is she modeled her program on the recovery movement. So, you know, there's like the 12 chapters, the 12 steps. So she was completely sober. And so I think that was really miraculous too, because all the advice I ever had about being a performer was, you know, you should drink more before you go on stage and relax. And I just thought, this isn't sustainable. You know, and I come from a family with a lot of alcoholics, so that like felt like a real dangerous. Yeah. And alcohol doesn't, like, you know, that wasn't going to help me. But I was like, where's this anxiety and fear coming from? So anyway, the idea that no one was teaching us how to practice, and then when I started kind of processing all this and teaching it to others, I realized too, like so many people come out of art school, so and just like I did, so damaged. Like a lot of people don't even know about my music history because I totally quit music after all that training and after all that work. It was like the music part of me that was very primary was murdered.
Oh, that's how I
going to
feel about it.
professional school for it. And I hear this so much for people who go to writing school or art school or any kind of thing they study that is their creative passion, and then they go to academia and it just dies. They're killed, they're critiqued when they're a baby beginner step. So we need a way of finding some safe place to figure out what our voice is, practice techniques, but that's another thing too. There's this, in any school, teaching creative stuff, there's such an emphasis on technique and the final product, and an absolute ignorance of what's happening inside the person, and where does expression come from? What if it's the opposite? What if it's really not about your technique? Really, technique will follow if you practice enough. If you write every day, you're going to get good at writing. You can learn techniques, you can learn the craft. But first, you have to have the courage to face the blank page a lot.
A lot.
A lot. Yeah, you have to start listening to your inner rhythm and practicing how you want to say what you want to say, and like the emotional life has to be brought to the process. And the emotional life is what's just radically missing from all the technique. And along with learning technique are all these judgments and comparisons and critiques, and there's a certain point where that's really valuable and you're ready for that, but for most people that happening too soon will just murder any creative impulse they have, and then the person has all these ideas about how they're unworthy or not good enough. So the process of developing a creative practice, there's methods and techniques for practice, and then and it's something that you can do in a few minutes a day starting out. It's like developing muscles, like stretching. If you're just learning, you learn to stretch, but the idea is that the practice is something very pleasurable and something that you look forward to and something that's fun and it doesn't feel like work. And so you start developing a healthy habit around having creative expression a regular part of your everyday life, or almost everyday life.
Oh, I love that so much. I'm totally one of those people who had their creative spirit killed in university. My degree is in fashion design, and actually today I'm wearing this shirt that I made, and it's only now, 20 years later, that I'm just starting to enjoy sewing for myself again, which is just, it's so ridiculous. Like I loved making my own clothes, and just
and
everything you're saying.
What happened for you? Like, what did you experience?
It was everything that you're talking about there. When I was younger, I wasn't in art classes. I didn't do a lot of creative stuff, and so this was my first steps out into exploring my creativity. And so to be critiqued and judged, and I was constantly wrong. My grades weren't very good until my last year. It was just too much. And then by the time I got out, it's like I was kind of starved, in some way, and I didn't trust myself. I didn't trust my creativity, and so it was really hard for me to move forward in fashion. I wasn't really aware of exactly what was going on, but it was mostly just I didn't trust myself anymore, and I had disconnected from my own creative passion. So so I'm really
I'm so sorry.
So yeah, it really feels like those are the kinds of things that kill dreams, right? And what I love is that the source of healing that and changing that is always accessible to us. Like we can start that practice at any time. It always feels harder than it is to actually start, but it's always accessible.
Well, and that's the thing that can be made really fun and enjoyable too. And that's why I disconnect technique from the process. Yeah. So right away in all my classes, I get people immediately deconstructing blank pages in a way that's really fun and fast and furious. And it's like, oh my gosh, and people have come to live workshops, and sometimes they just kind of confront me in the doorway. They haven't even put their things down or found their seat. They're like, if you can get me to write, it's going to be a miracle. I've taken every workshop, and I can't write. I can't even write in my journal. It's like, and my thought is, wow, up your expectations, because like, to me, like, you're going to be writing within 2 seconds, believe me. No one doesn't do it.
Oh, for sure.
I'm like, well, that's easy. I'm thinking, that's easy. Should I tell them it's so easy? Like, pick a bigger challenge. But it's true. It's never not worked.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
and if someone's having resistance or struggle with it, it's totally okay. I find like, for every resistance, there's about 10 different doorways you can sneak in the back way, and then it's like,
yeah,
this first page doesn't count. Actually, the first day of the whole workshop, this is doesn't count. Oh my God, I'm so attached to these though. These practice pages,
Oh, totally. I was thinking about that the other day about the word miracles too. People so often say like, "Oh, this was a miracle. I can't believe I'm working on my dream now that was so stuck." And I always feel like those miracles are like that's what life actually is. It's just if you just start, it's all there for you, right? And we're just so convinced that it's too hard, or that we have to wait, or that we need the right this or that, and that we don't have enough time or enough money or enough support. And as soon as we find a way through all of that and start doing it anyway, it's just miraculous to see that, oh, we can do it. It's here. I really love that.
Well, and I think, we'll all go through that. I mean, I remember how that felt.
Yeah.
I remember how impossible so many of my dreams felt. And how long many of them took. And any time we're going for something that we haven't done before, like, for example, this next book that I've been procrastinating on, it's just like, I'm humbled by the creative process. I have lots of tools, and I've written books before, but it kind of doesn't matter. Like, I'm doing a new one, and it's like this new thing, and I'm having to dig into a different place. So this new book is part memoir and technique. So it's like combining my stories, including the story I told about working with these girls and where the process came from. And so there are personal stories, and along with the techniques and everything. So it's very humbling to feel that insecurity or disbelief, or like, I just really, honestly, I'll speak for myself first. There's nothing I make that doesn't have some amount of churn with it. It's not like I've figured this out. I do know, like, I have tools, and I'm like, okay, I can go do what I'm doing and then get back to it. Like, I do produce a lot of work, and I'm not worried that I won't. But the creative process has teeth. Like, it can really get us in its jaws, and when we're in it, we just think it's so real. We'll think, I'll think, who cares? And, no one wants to read about this, and, just these doubtful voices. But, like, they don't have to stop me forever and don't have to take over. But it's it requires some fortitude to go there. So I just have tremendous respect for people who are even considering, like, anyone looking at this, wherever they are, whether maybe they're just starting to think they can maybe dream. That's huge, because we're all in process. We're all, like, having to start at square one every time we do something new. I mean, do you experience that?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I, in my group, the Creative Dream Circle, I have a whole section called the Unsticking Station for when you're stuck. And I'm like, I had to put this here because I know I get stuck every day. And I want you to know, like, small stucks most days, but some days they're really big. And that I want you to know that that doesn't mean that you can't move forward.
Yeah.
Like, there seems to be this idea in our culture that there's something wrong. Like, if you can't just do it, if it's not easy, that there's something wrong. And I love the way you phrased it, that the creative process has teeth. I mean, I don't know for sure, but it seems to me like you never get to a place where it stops being difficult at some points. That's just, it wouldn't be
I
as
think we'd
as
be
worthy.
dead. I mean, when I used to think about this, like, if I'm kind of wound up about something, deep down, if I really look at it, it just means I really care. I care.
Yeah.
Like, I'm doing the creative practice class, a new one starting this week. And I've taught this class several times before. Hundreds of people have done it. And I can't, like, last night, I just had this kind of moment of, oh my God, what if everybody hates it? I mean, just, fear.
Yeah.
But it's like, well, I just want people to get so much out of it. And I know it works, like, it's proven. And people repeat it. Like, I've had people repeat it every single time. And it's like, okay, great. But yeah, there's that thing. And the thing I wanted to say about being stuck too is, as you do creative practice and as you learn how to manage these cycles, I'm going to bookmark another thing too. I kind of think and speak very non-linearly. There's another thing you said about that if it's not easy, we're not doing it right.
Yeah.
And our culture also has built into it this idea that if you're not constantly being more successful or improving or going upward, kind of like a resume is supposed to be looking like this, which I think is just such an absolutely male diagram. Like, you know? Whereas really it's circular and ups and downs and spiraling inward and spiraling out. You know, nothing is a straight line trajectory, constantly getting better. And, you know, so I just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
It might be totally off topic.
No, that's good.
But when we're practicing, one thing that's really useful and so helpful is we get really good at being constructive in our fallow time. So instead of, you know, for a lot of people who really struggle with addiction or struggle with self-destructive behavior, a lot of that's tied into them not doing their creative work or being stressed about it. And so certain stressors kind of pull people downward into more destructive habits. And the thing is, we can use our creative practice to become aware of, how do I self-sabotage? You know, and it doesn't even have to be like as strong as like going on some, you know, addictive bender, but it could be like just missing appointments or not responding to opportunities or missing deadlines, you know, whatever. So we can learn where our pitfalls are, how we or we can start mapping our cycles too.
Yeah.
Like, oh, after I teach a workshop, I need downtime, or before I'm about to put some new work into the world for sale, I know I'm going to feel extra vulnerable, so those days I'm going to make sure I have dinners planned with friends or something. So we can develop techniques for supporting ourselves, and then the cycles don't have to be so deep and dark. You know, we can just kind of go, okay, here it comes. And so now, thank goodness for like streaming television, because that is like probably like, it's like, all right, it's time for me to watch like a whole season of something like in 3 nights.
Yeah.
And that's just what I do, and I'm aware of it, and I'm okay with it. And it's like, I live in Mexico, so I don't really have TV like per week. So I just wait till the whole season's available to buy on iTunes or something, and then it's like, all right, I'm doing it. You know, I'm watching the whole thing behind everybody else.
Yeah, actually, I just watched Canadian Netflix, which is another couple of years behind everyone
Yeah, the
else.
Mexican Netflix has nothing. You can watch things with subtitles though, which is fun.
Which is fun. Yeah, I just love what you're saying about figuring out those patterns and then creating supports for them. It's just like, and just again, those ideas that we're supposed to, like, if you put on a workshop, you're supposed to feel happy about it. It's like, and actually, there are aspects of it that are really exhausting, and it's normal to be really scared the night before. And I loved what you said about worrying about the course. That starting now, even though you know, I mean, you've done it so often, you know that nothing's going to go wrong. When you really care about something, I think it's normal to have those fears and worries. Like, I actually love those worries. Like, they're showing how much you really care about the people who are coming in, and how much you care about the process, and how much you care about everything that happens.
I
Right?
do care. I mean, I want people to always feel like they've gotten so much more value than their time or money.
Yeah.
And that just means a lot to me. That's just part of how I feel about things, that I just want people to get so much to take away from it, from the experience.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That is so sweet. And also, I was thinking about when you mentioned that you're in Mexico. I don't know if this is a big topic, but that's another thing that I really admire about you, is that you found ways to travel while working for yourself. So how, I don't want to ask, how does that work? Because that's, that's too big. But I guess what was it that made you choose to do that? Or to make it a priority?
My blog is called, for lack of I don't really have a phrase or cute name for my blog. That's why I've just been using my own name. But the title of the site is Creativity, Travel, and Courage. So as much as I am an artist, I'm also a traveler, and I'm just in love with the world. I love exploring. I love meeting people from other places. I love going to other places and seeing what people are doing, what people are eating, what it looks like. I'm just so eternally curious about the world, and if I see, for example, art or a textile from a certain place, that's what makes me want to go there. So that's how I figure out where I'm going to go and what I'm going to do. But I've been self-employed for a long time, and then and so I guess I was always location independent, in the sense that I didn't work for someone else in an office. But when I was living in Chicago, and I did a lot of consulting work with design and all that stuff, this was before the internet, so this is a while ago, like in the early 90s, when I was kind of transitioning from being a therapist to like what I was going to do. I did a lot of jobs, like graphic design type things, and so I would take contracts. So I would do limited time contracts working for other people, and then I had my own like freelance gigs. But I could either work at my house, or sometimes I would work on site at a company for a while, like if they paid enough to make me like go do that. But then as soon as the internet happened, when the internet really got into full swing, that's when I moved to San Francisco. And I started working for another company teaching intuitive painting workshops. That's what brought me out there. But I still had some of my design clients in Chicago, and so I had kind of like 2 gigs going at once, and they all involved travel. So traveling around to teach the workshops, and then being able to digitally send my files to the client that I was working for in Chicago from San Francisco. And that kind of freedom was just something really important to me. Certainly when I was starting out, especially, I could have made a lot more money working for somebody else and having a traditional job, and I certainly would have had benefits. Like, I've never had that kind of stability or security. until I was like in a better financial position to give myself all those things. So, and it took a while, you know, it wasn't an overnight success. And, you know, but yeah, so it's that kind of ability to design my schedule and work from anywhere. Eventually I started a design firm in San Francisco, but we were based there, but actually our talent and our people on our team were worldwide, and so were our clients. So my whole idea was to have a virtual agency that could serve people anywhere. So even in 2001 or 2002, when I started that company, that was a radical idea.
Yeah.
Like, people thought you should have an office. Everyone was like, if you don't have a fancy office in San Francisco, no one's going to take you seriously. And I said, but I believe that we can show people a different model for work. And we used WebEx, you know. I mean, that was our main tool. They were just like coming out. But we paid out like $100 a month to do all of our meetings on WebEx. And, you know, it's amazing like how many tools are available now for people that are so inexpensive. But to me, that was still much better than paying for an office and having to get dressed up in a costume and go commute.
Yeah, it still blows me away how much the world has changed in that way just in the last 20 years.
10 years.
Or 10 years, yeah. Just how it was, like a lot of what we do today would have been inconceivable. Like that was when he said like that you could send files digitally, like, you know, we never would have thought that would be possible. And
it used to be so much more complicated and slower.
And more expensive.
Does anyone remember modems?
I was thinking too of slides when I was selling my art, right? I would have to do those slides and take my little set of slides around to different galleries, and just how excruciating that whole process was.
Yeah. So I wonder, do you have any more questions? Like, so after you read The Creative Entrepreneur and got launched in your new direction,
you know, it's essentially, I think, what The Creative Entrepreneur really helped me with was that I didn't see a way that, like, it was feeling like being a business person was separate from being an artist. And just not being able and not being interested in being a business person and not knowing how to reconcile that. And then I started to see how I can actually apply my creativity to my business, which now just seems really obvious. And also even applying all of the the healing and personal growth that for me comes out of the creative journaling process, applying that into my business, which is just an aspect of how I want to be in the world. So it feels a lot more organic and connected now.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't feel like before, it's like business was all of these tools and I didn't know how to use any of them. I had to learn all these different things. And now it just feels more just an aspect of bringing what I want to bring, or sharing what I want to share with the world. And that in terms of tools and things, whatever I need to figure out, I can figure out. It's like there are so many options today.
Well, there really weren't tools before for individual solo business owners. I mean, more and more, there are so many great tools available now, so many resources available to help people that are having a solo business, which are wonderful. And I think still the thing that makes my work a little bit different is to really address the creative and emotional life of the person. I guess I'll always be a therapist in a way. That the reason why we're attracted to do something, so the thing that makes us good at what we want to do or what we want to sell. So if whatever we're making, if you're designing dresses, you know, and that's your thing and you're really good at it, why would anyone expect you would also intuitively be good at business? I don't think anyone is. So we may have these little germ talents or inclinations or things that come easy to us, but it's kind of a finite set of things. The rest of it we have to learn. And that can be really intimidating. So, wow, how and what order, and it's so confusing, and this person's doing it that way. And like all the tactical decisions can be really overwhelming. And by tactical decisions, I mean all these decisions like what kind of website should I have, and who should host it, and what should my name of my business be, and should I accept PayPal or some other thing, or, like all these decisions ultimately matter but don't matter. Those are the things that can really trip us over and over and over again, or help or waste a lot of time just testing our idea or doing the thing we love. So there's a lot to just managing the overwhelm or the anxiety or emotions or doubts and fears that accompany starting any new venture. So when you're doing your creative work, that has its own set of anxieties and joys. Mm-hmm. But like talking about the reason we need tools to help us confront the difficult parts without quitting or without destructing. We need the same wherewithal to deal with all the business stuff, so blogging and mailing lists and sales or shows or however you're doing it, that is going to take a totally different part of your brain and a totally different skill set that many of us really have to work hard at learning and applying. So there are things that don't come naturally to all of us, like being organized or knowing how to deal with receipts or whatever like that. But it all can be learned, and it's not hard. But when you like sort of put it all together and look at the whole picture together, it can just be really overwhelming and scary and confusing, especially if you have other people outside of you giving input and helpful feedback or whatever, whether you're asking for it or not. So there can be a lot of confusion. And in fact, even with all the resources online, I think it also can create more overwhelm sometimes because there's so many resources and classes and things and books. So it's like, well, who's right and what do I do and which path? So if you have a creative practice, what happens is it clarifies what to do next because you're learning how to listen to yourself and turn down the volume on the noise and really listen to yourself, and also create a space for all the emotions to be there. Not that you dwell on them, but that they just have a place to land that isn't going to harm you, or you don't have to act it out. It's just like, okay, I'm frustrated, or I'm angry, or I'm scared. And when we give voice to that and let it be, then it frees up our energy to actually do the work, whether it's accounting or whatever we have to do, or sewing, It's just, it's very clarifying. Like, I couldn't live my life without it.
Yeah.
I couldn't be doing what I'm doing without it. So it's just like a thing that I feel has to be more out in the world, and I really want more people to know about it. Because it's something that I didn't have, and it would have saved me so much, not just pretty much decades of time, but it would have saved me so much pain. I mean, I wouldn't have had to struggle with so much self-doubt and fear if I had just had some methods for meeting myself where I was and then taking the next step.
That's really what it comes down to. I know everything that I have in my classes too. It's just like, sometimes it feels like everybody just wants to know, to stay on the outside and to know, what do I do? And it's like, as soon as you stop and go inside, it's very easy to know what to do. And there's that resistance to turning around. Right? But once you've, worked through that, and then that's a beautiful thing about the visual journaling too, is that it's fun. It makes it more fun to turn around and to take that time. And I love the word that you use, clarifying. Like, that's really in essence what it is. It clarifies not just giving space for whatever fear or anxiety is there, but clarifying what your intuition is telling you, and what you know that you're capable of. So that is, yeah. It's a really, really beautiful thing.
And practical.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So we don't have a plan for this, but I'm just going to put it out there and say that we are going to offer a spot. Lisa has offered a spot in her creative practice course, and we're going to work out the details to that, and I'm going to put it in the post below. I'm really, really excited about that. This is, as you can tell from listening to Lisa, she has a real deep connection to what she's doing, to what she's teaching, and there's a lot of, like, it feels like a deep commitment to taking care of everyone who's in the class. Not caretaking, but like, you know, having that.
Yeah, if I could bring everybody a cup of tea. Actually, if I could sit with everybody at their kitchen table with a cup of tea and do it with them, I mean, that's the experience I try to create.
Yeah, I think the
word
I'm
really doing it together, even though I can't physically be there, or they can't physically be here. And so really, it's so beautiful because we have really people all over the world, and people will say, oh, I'm writing from the tip of Africa, or I'm in Australia, or I'm in, you know, Singapore, all of these places, which is so delightful. Mm-hmm. You know, there's this community connecting for, I'm sure you get this too, your readers and people in your classes. When we're able to teach online, it just opens up so many more connections.
Yeah, there's something different about it from when, like for me, the in-person teaching hasn't been retreats, so everyone's been from the same place. So mm-hmm. when I do the online classes and having that, all of those different perspectives, there is a real richness in that, for sure.
So rich, yeah.
Yay. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for all that. There's a lot of, I know there's a lot of really, really valuable ideas that you shared, and that people are going to have a lot to think about. And I'm going to post links to you in the post to this also. So again, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, and I just love what you have going on behind you.
Oh, that's actually my business plan.
Beautiful. All right, well, I'll have to interview you about that. I love it.
All right.
Okay.